All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stramaglio Show. And I have to say, I'm a little nervous about this show. We've got quite a guy as part, we're going to be interviewing Tom Chaby, a captain, a Navy SEAL captain. And it tickles me to have this opportunity to be able to have this conversation with Tom and learn more about him and his background. So, Tom, welcome, Captain. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. Looking forward to it.
So obviously, it's not very often we can get a captain from the Navy SEAL team. So I want to kind of touch on that a little bit. Can you give us just um, your more recent exit from the military? What position were you in? And then I want to go back to the beginning and ask you what drove you to be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, well, the most recent position I had in the military was 10 years ago. So let's get that straight right out of the gate. My last few assignments came after I made the deliberate decision, as painful as it was to pull myself off track for upward mobility, for future rank. I was being considered for Major Command, Admiral, Flag, all those great things. And I was afforded an opportunity to go to Afghanistan for a year to, at the time, work with General McChrystal. Great opportunity. I was all about it. And then a close friend of mine, my mentor, challenged me to really examine what I wanted from life, what I wanted for my family. And maybe we'll get into this later. I came from a broken family, never met my biological father. And that really drives much of the decisions I've had throughout my military career and before. And I made the decision to pull myself off track. And at that point, I was no longer promotable. And I went to positions that were really more suited to help the force. The first one was I was the deputy commander for all SEAL training. And then the final position I had, I was the director of the preservation of the force and family effort. And that was full spectrum resilience. And that program, POTIF, Preservation of the Force and Family, stemmed from surveys we did and about how we were, I'm not going to say struggling, but we were experiencing some negative demographical responses to the force of what was going on over in Afghanistan. And then that would transcend to Iraq and what was happening around the world. And we had an upward tick in divorce. Imagine that. An upward tick in alcohol and drug use. Imagine that. And then really disturbingly, an upward tick in suicidal ideations. So my last position was to help Admiral McCraven build a program, a full spectrum program that included the physical domain, the psychological domain, the social domain, that'd be the family piece. And then the fourth pillar was the spiritual domain. And then we would add a fifth pillar later, the cognitive domain, the brain piece. So that was my last position. It was a great position. I loved it, made a huge difference for the force. But that really helped me transition from active duty military service to back into the civilian sector.
Incredible. And just for the audience, can you share with them how many combat or deployments you had? What did that history look like leading you up to that last position?
Yeah, it's, in the SEAL community, our deployments aren't crystal clean like they are in the typical Navy unit on a ship. I look at it this way. I've been deployed throughout my 26-year career. I was deployed for 11 years of that time. And that's a bunch of deployments. Some of them were over a year long. Some of them were 3 months long. So I tallied it all up and it came out to 11 total years.
Incredible. And if you don't mind, and I certainly understand if it's something you don't wish to pursue, but you mentioned that you came from a broken home and you never met your father. That's an unbelievable situation for most people. So how did you rise above that?
Yeah, you say that as if I understood that when I was a kid, and I didn't. I thought my life was normal. Although I did grow up in a suburb of New York City, suburbia, if you may. Most of my friends came from, a typical mom, dad. Grew up in a very Catholic town. My family was not Catholic, but most of my friends had 6, 7 brothers and sisters. I did not have that. I did not have this family unit that was integrated, close, picnics on Sunday, the whole deal. And I really wanted that. I didn't realize I wanted that, but I was after it. Maybe I was envious, and I went searching for it. And that's really what drove me to find my own family. And I found it in sports to start. And then I found it in the military after my athletic career came to an end. So, yeah, no, I never looked at it as, oh no, look at me. It just, I don't know, we had everything I needed. We didn't have a ton of money, but we had resources. I felt good to go. I could do things like my friends were. I just didn't have the family unit, and I really wanted that.
Interesting. So what led you to join the military?
What led me was, first family I found. My family was fine. My mom's a great person. My brothers, sadly, my older brother passed away of cancer. But we had, our family was fine, but it wasn't fulfilling that need. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. However you want to look at it, I wanted something different, something more. And the first place I found that was in sports. Like all slightly above average athletes, my athletic career came to an end for me after college. And I didn't have the family unit again that I so desperately wanted. And instinctively, I knew the military might be an answer. I had a friend that was considering becoming a pilot, and I took the same route. I went to the recruiter and proceeded to explore becoming a naval aviator. And I found out pretty quickly through questions, Lieutenant Susan Zahodny, the recruiter I went to. It's amazing I remember her name, but she's very, very important in my life. And she asked me great questions. And she, at one point during this process, and you don't just go to the Navy recruiter, sign on the dotted line, and you get your head shaved. It's a process. You got to go to MEPS, get a physical. You got to take an ASVAB test. It takes weeks, sometimes months. And through this process, the recruiter said, "Hey, Tom, have you ever considered trying to become part of the teams?" The teams. And I'm like, the teams? What the hell is the teams? And she proceeded to explain to me the SEAL teams. And this is before people knew what SEALs were, and I had no idea. She explained the SEAL community to me, showed me a video called Be Someone Special, and I was hooked. I was all in. And we switched that Top Gun naval aviator aspiration to becoming part of the teams. And I never looked back.
So when you joined the teams, if I can ask, how old were you?
Yeah, by the time I came into the Navy and went to officer candidate school, I was 25 years old. So that's pretty old, by the way, for somebody to come into the Navy. 26 years of age is the cutoff point. So I made that by a year. And for me, it was the perfect age to come in. I had experienced life. I had, tried to do the best I could athletically, and I was on to my next chapter.
So when you joined the teams, and most of us who just dream of being a SEAL, you're talking about the epitome of a military force, and I know that's probably not something you feel like we feel, but I mean, special ops guys and the SEAL teams and Delta Force. I mean, that's the epitome of success as far as the military goes, and as a human being and as a leader. So when you joined the SEALs and you came out of training, not out of the SEAL team, what was the first thing that shocked you that said, holy cow, I got to learn this. I got to do this. Was there any moment that you thought, I got this?
Yeah, for me, I, this might sound arrogant, and I don't mean it to be. I got to SEAL training, and I felt like I found my people. And you don't just sign the dotted line and you're a SEAL. First I had to spend 4 months at officer candidate school, and that was academically challenging. We were being tested on a weekly basis, and people don't make it through that program, and not many, but some people just don't find out. They find out they're not a fit. And I found like I found my people when I got to BUDS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training. I never felt out of place. I never felt, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? The only time that I'll say I not concerned, but a little bit of maybe apprehension was the notion of me becoming a leader. And I, the thing that qualified me to be a leader in the SEAL community was I had a college degree. And when you really think about it, when you pull the skin of the onion back, a college degree qualifies you to do very little. Especially it does not qualify you to be a leader in the SEAL community. And I wasn't qualified, to be frank with you. But the one thing I was effective with was I listened. I was willing to be humble. I was willing to be vulnerable and ask for help. And I had a few mentors that felt it was their role to teach me the ways. And I was smart enough to listen. And those mentors, I thank them. They really protected me. They prepared me, and they challenged me to be a more effective leader. And the reason they were doing it, not was because they cared so much about me. Maybe I thought they did at the time, and they did to a certain extent. But the reality was they cared about the community, and they realized I was going to be a leader for them and for their teammates, and they wanted me to be as effective as I could be for them. And maybe it was selfish on their part, but God bless them because they prepared me.
So your definition of being a leader or leadership, um, it's an interesting observation you make regarding college education. I would say I would agree with you. Based on the human condition, that's probably the least important of all the qualities. So how would you define for the audience your message to the people in our industry who want to be really good leaders? What do you advise them?
Yeah, number one, I said two words. They're two qualities. They're both mindsets. And in America, I think we look at them inaccurately. People look at humility and vulnerability, being humble, being vulnerable. They give it a connotation of weakness, and oh no, that's a mistake. Being humble and being willing to be vulnerable is strength. I would start there. Number two, I would challenge people to realize as a leader, it's not about you. And a lot of leaders go into leadership thinking, look at me. I'm up on this pedestal. I've got this parking spot. I've got all these things that I've aspired to have. And it's not about you. It's about the mission. It's about your teammates. And it's being selfless. And being a leader is brutal. But it's also one of the most satisfying positions a person could have, and it's relevant. And that's what I wanted out of life. And I couldn't have been put in a better place for what I needed.
So you were in the military quite a few years, and obviously some serious long-term deployments. And I heard you mention that you had like an epiphany where your family became more important than becoming an admiral or promotion, whatever the next promotion might have been. So what was the impact on your family with all of those significant deployments?
The impact was pretty low because I didn't get married till the 18-year mark of a 26-year career. Didn't have our first child till the 19-year mark. So for 7 years, I had a family, 7 out of 26. And yes, I went on 3 deployments for a total of 2.5 years, tallying it up right now in my head. But I had a lot of control. I was in a senior position. We also had the internet at that point. I, as a commanding officer of a SEAL team, commanding officer of a task unit, commanding officer of a task force, I had accessibility to the phone anytime I needed it. And that really reduced the challenge on my family. Sure, it was tough. And my kids, they were very young. They barely remember those last deployments. So if I could say dare I say this, but I believe it's true, I managed my career in an appropriate fashion. And I probably got out at the perfect time for me to become what I consider the most important job of my life, and that's to be a father to my 2 sons.
And I believe they are Trevor and Travis.
That's true. Travis is older, A before E. Travis is he's going to be 18 in May. Check that out. And then Trevor just turned 16 a few weeks ago.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. So, thinking about your post-military career, and in reading your bio and speaking with you, I know that you became very friendly with someone I have tremendous appreciation for, Nancy Lycan at DEX and the DEX folks. What is it? What is it that you do for? Because our audience is very familiar with DEX and some of those people, the Doyles. What is it that you do for DEX? What contribution are you making to them and their leadership team?
Yeah, fantastic. It's interesting. I met Dan. Dan, listened to what I did and what I currently do. And Dan challenged me. He said, "Hey, I'd like you to talk with our development team, with our leadership development team and professional development team." And he never guided me. He said, "Go do what you do. Unleash your greatness on my people." And which I give him my hats off to Dan Doyle. He's like, "Hey, go figure it out. Bring us value in the best way you can." And so what do? I work on 3 lines of operation: professional development, performance optimization, I'll call it. And that's how do I help the individual? How do I help the individual be more effective? And that's the first line. The second line of operation is team effectiveness. And that's how do I help groups of people work together more effectively? And then the third line of operation is leadership, pure leadership. How do I, as an individual, help influence those around me? So through those 3 lines of operation, I work with different teams across the United States, from out in Utah, Idaho, all the way up to Baltimore and down here in Florida, of course. I'm working with key leaders, the sales teams, the sales professionals, in different ways, and to help them professionally, professional development, performance optimization. I help them think more effectively. Like, Mike, I'll ask you a question. If you can think more effectively, will you have more effective results?
You should.
You should, right? And I help them do that. I help them be more disciplined. I help them respond to what I call micro outcomes more neutrally. If you could be more resilient, you'll be more consistent. And then at the end of the day, I help them with those individuals with being leaders. And I think I need to really give you a snapshot into the leadership piece. I look at leadership this way: 60% of the entire 100% leadership quotient, 60% is about you, Mike, leading yourself. It's about me leading myself. The next 20% is about me accepting leadership from other people. It doesn't matter how senior I am. I could be Dan Doyle. I could be the CEO, the president. The first 60% is about me leading myself. The next 20% is about me accepting leadership from others on my team. Let's go back to me, where I said that I was smart enough, intuitive enough, effective enough, dare I say, to accept mentorship from others. That's leadership. 100% leadership. The last 20% falls into that more traditional definition of leadership where you're up there, I'm not going to say lording over your people, but helping influencing them, helping set a standard, helping hold them accountable, empowering them, all those other elements of leadership to make your team more effective and drive performance.
So if you don't mind my asking, how did you meet Dan Doyle?
Yes, socially, I live very close to him in a small town called Bel Air, Florida. My in-laws know, senior, know Dan's mom. I had met them socially. And this whole thing, me working with DEX Imaging, came from us just being friends and him saying, hey, how can you help my team become more effective? I will say this about DEX Imaging. They are all in about empowering the individual. They are all in about flattening. What most people look at this vertical task organization, they want to flatten it. I love what they do when somebody comes to them like, Dan, what do you think I should do? It's great. This happened to me as well. Dan, what do you think I should do? And Dan goes, well, what do you think you should do, Tom? And I go, this, and this. And he goes, we'll go do it. And then let's see how it works out. And then let's look at the data. Hey, that worked, that didn't. Let's tweak the good. Let's eliminate the bad or replace it with something more effective. And let's keep moving forward and create an upward arc where we're continually improving, embracing the concept of Kaizen, marginal gain. Let's improve 1% a day. Let's just get a little bit better. And they're geniuses at that. They've built a team around this concept, and that's why they're growing. That's why they're prospering. That's why they're expanding and becoming more and more effective.
I love that summary. So let's move on to something I know is very near and dear to your heart, the leadership component with folks like Dex. I love hearing that, pushing, changing the silos, flattening it out, empowering people. So when you think about the things in your life that are so important to you now, you've got the business side that you're really pushing and promoting and very effective with. I know you, based on your resume and our previous conversations, you're deeply committed to a number of programs and a number of things that affect the military people and so on beyond their military career. And I know I am particularly interested because I support hashtag 22. I'm very focused on making sure we do everything we can to help eliminate those 22 to 25 deaths per day. So on the suicide part. So what are the most important philanthropic and charitable efforts that you put forward that we could tell the audience, take a look at these things and see if you can help, join the force?
Yeah, well, I'm on the board of directors for an entity that, interestingly, it would be disingenuous to say I helped found it, but the gentleman that helped found it, or actually, let me rephrase it, the gentleman who did found it, he worked for me at the time he founded it, and I empowered him at that time. And I'm proud that I was intuitive enough to do that. But this entity that I'm working with right now, on multiple different levels, it's called the Honor Foundation. You can find out more about it at honor.org. And the Honor Foundation does something that's so fundamental, it saves lives. And suicide is clearly that one end of the spectrum. It's brutal. It's daunting. Anything we can do to prevent it, I'm all in. I've lost 5 teammates to suicide, sadly. But this entity, this effort, the Honor Foundation, helps service members, helps SEALs and other special operators, helps these heroes, these warriors transition from active duty service. It helps them transition to becoming civilians. And the ability to do that is, oh, yeah, just go become a civilian. It's not that easy. You've been living, in my case, it was 26 years, living in this environment where we didn't have a lot of autonomy. We were told where to be, when to be there, and what to bring with us, and what we were going to be doing. Now you're a civilian, and your autonomy is completely different. As a civilian, people don't understand the retired or the separating service member. And the Honor Foundation, first and foremost, helps the service member understand their value proposition. I know that's an old, worn out phrase, but it's true. Each service member, when they're leaving the military, they have immense value. Anybody listening to this call, I challenge you, listen and take a chance on a service member. Couple things. You can trust them, particularly those that have been in for 10, 15, 20 years. They have been vetted at so many levels. You just intuitively know, you intellectually know they're trustworthy. They're going to show up for work on time. They're going to show up prepared, ready to go. The second thing, to the teammate, they are unbelievable at making quality decisions with incomplete information. Mike, would you want that on your team? Somebody who can make a quality decision with partial info. Who doesn't want that? I mean, that's the essence of a great teammate. And it goes beyond that. How do you write a resume? How do you communicate in an interview? What do you do to follow up? What kind of clothes should you wear? Et cetera, et cetera. In this effort, the Honor Foundation helps these young men and young women, by the way, transition. Then it also does networking for them, where it gets them in front of the people they need to be in front of to change their life in the meaningful way they aspire to change it.
And the name is, again, for our producer to make sure he gets it right on the bottom?
The Honor Foundation. And the website is www.honor.org. HONOR, honor.org.
Thank you, Tom. So how long have you been working with them?
Well, since their inception, essentially. I was an advisor for years. Then they asked me, what an honor, not to use the essence of their title to describe how I feel about being part of it. But I've been on the board for 3 years now, and it's satisfying. I get my needs met to be a relevant member of the community still in a new way, in a networking sort of way. And it's just a wonderful place to be. And what they do, they save lives. When they help somebody leave the military and find meaningful, relevant work in the civilian sector, I believe relevance, personal, wow, I feel like what I'm doing is bringing value to the world. I feel like what I'm doing is bringing value to my family. When this organization helps people do that and helps people develop and build a more meaningful life, it's game changing. It's game changing. And I believe it saves lives at the end of the day.
Purpose.
Purpose, exactly. Ding, ding, ding.
So you've been in the industry for some time now. You've been, really out of the military. I think you said 13 years. And you've been working with a whole bunch of executives and other folks inside our industry and other industries, which I believe you're willing to share with people outside of our industry. You're available to help companies grow, correct?
Absolutely. That's what I do for a living.
Okay. So for anyone in the audience, we're going to make sure you know how to get a hold of Tom. And if you have a need and you like what Tom is saying here today, please feel free to reach out to him and you'll have all the information to be able to do that. So as we come around the corner, and in all of your expertise, military and otherwise, and you really touched on quite a few with DEX, but what message would you give to the young people coming into this industry that we call the imaging channel? Is there a message that you say, hey, you've got to do this, this, and this?
Yeah, my message to young folks is the same as my message would be to older folks. Anybody coming into the print industry, it's challenging. It's a challenging industry, but it's rewarding. And the opportunity is immense. And it's waiting there for you. Doesn't matter if you're tall, short. Doesn't matter what college you went to or if you even went to college. What matters is how you approach it. How you approach it. My biggest piece of advice, two pieces. The first one, process over outcome. Don't think, oh, I want to make a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money. Yeah, that's the goal. We all want to succeed financially. But the way to get there is by executing a process, learning how to execute the process of selling or servicing print. There's great opportunity in both the service side, the operational side, the sales side, the administrative side, all these pieces of print, amazing opportunities, but it's all process driven. The second piece is, yeah, you're going to have a lot of ups, a lot of downs. It's going to be challenging. Learn to be more neutral. As high as you might think something is, man, I just closed a $500,000 sale. That's phenomenal. Stay neutral. Dang it, I just lost that opportunity. That's the third one in a row I've lost. It's not that bad. Stay neutral. Keep executing the process. The people that are around you, the leaders that you have been afforded the opportunity to work with are sharing with you. Trust them. It's not rocket science, but emotionally, it's difficult. Culturally, it's counterintuitive to how we think. And you need to become a more process-oriented person. And it's tough because everything they're going to be barking at you, at DEX, it's budget, 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 sales, 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 quota, quota, quota. And that's outcome, outcome, outcome. But the only way to reach an outcome is to learn how to execute a process more effectively and do it iteratively and grow systematically. That's my advice.
Great advice. And you don't find you said that advice applies to everybody, but you don't find these young kids coming in who are born on the internet and a mobile device in their hand. The advice it's not adaptable. It's the same. Execute.
Yeah, it's the same. And yeah, sure. They look at the world a little bit differently, but human nature, human dynamics are the same. They transcend the generations. And, trying to interface with a prospective client, prospective partner, the challenges there are, self-doubt. The challenges are lack of understanding over what's going to resonate with that person on the other end of the conversation. And that, to me, is the hurdle. Some folks can just get over it. I personally think baseball players make really good people for print because they deal in a world of failure. My kids both play baseball, and it's it's way harder than football, the sport I played. And it's harder skill wise, yes, but it's harder mindset wise because if you fail 70% of the time, you're a rock star in baseball. If you fail 70% of the time in football, you're getting booted off the team. So for me, it's, mindset. Mindset is everything. And we don't teach that. We don't teach people how to think in our culture. It's a huge mistake. That's something I do, and I do it well. And I help people grow. I help people become more effective in a difficult environment.
Thank you for that good counsel, good advice, the history. I love the idea of staying neutral, watch those ebb and flows, the highs and lows, regardless of how old or whatever experience you have in whatever job. So I think you did a fabulous job. I know the audience is going to love hearing this. And for the audience, I have been honored to nominate Tom for the Canada Gala Veteran of the Year Award. So, Tom, from me to you, thank you for that opportunity to nominate you for that exclusive and really wonderful award. I hope I see you in November. I'm sure, with your permission, we're going to make sure that happens. So I will see you in November. And we thank you, sir, and have a great one. Much appreciated.
Have a great day. Thank you.